All right, man. Monday Night Football. Tampa Bay Bucks at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 8.5 here. Still undefeated, 7-0 Chiefs going up against the 4-4 Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah, Shine's really come off the Bucks in the last couple of weeks with no wide receivers. We've completely lost faith in them.
That's it, huh?
Collectively.
Vegas. We have no faith.
Vegas is out at 8.5.
I was going to wait until, if the Chiefs win this game, but just wanted to highlight something really quick because of the high-level NFL discussions going around here. The NFL's failing people and the development and blah, 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 all this stuff, right? Baker Mayfield was essentially a 500 quarterback. If you want to look at wins and losses, tells a story.
Right.
500 quarterback for the Browns. Wasn't anything close for the Panthers or for the Rams, but let's just, for the sake of discussion, 500 quarterback for the Browns. One game under 500, really. And then right now he's one game over 500 as the Bucs starting quarterback. So if they lose this game, he's a 500. He's essentially the same quarterback in the end. Geno Smith's about a 500 quarterback for Seattle. So like all this discussion about the NFL is like failing these first contract quarterbacks, and then they're getting rejuvenated in the next spot. Baker and Geno have kind of landed in the results are right in the middle, right? They're right in the middle of that mid-tier quarterback where a couple of weeks it's like, look at Baker, he's MVP candidate. And then, oh, no, you keep throwing the ball to the defense against the Ravens. What are you doing?
So you're saying these middle-class quarterbacks are, in fact, 500 quarterbacks, like the middle class contract, and 500. It's all the same.
It's all landing at the same place. But Baker in particular, this idea that, the Browns just, they didn't know what to do with him and they didn't develop him and whatever it was. And you say maybe they should have rolled with him. And the Bucs rejuvenated him. They got him back. It's like, well, he is essentially returning the same results as he did during first contract years with the Browns so far. All that said, again, the Bucs had no quarterback option when they signed him. And they signed him on the cheap. And he gave them an opportunity to win a division and get to the playoffs. But again, it's a challenge, right? The consistency is the challenge. We saw that a couple weeks ago, the last time the Bucs played on Monday night. When the receivers went down, Baker started to make some bad decisions. And I think it's difficult when you don't have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Like, he threw the ball 50 times last week. And it's just, he's not the type of guy that you want throwing the ball 50 times, making good decision after good decision. He had 2 picks, decisions that he would want back. He's been making some of those this year, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and they got stomped last week, so it's tough to kind of.
Wait, who? The Bucs?
Not last week. The Ravens game, rather.
Yeah, the Ravens game. Yeah, last week was closer. But, I mean, honestly, like they had a safety that got them back in. Like, it was a 2-score game late.
Yeah, like that's the thing. They got stomped in that game, and even though they kind of got back and threatened to make a comeback, it wasn't as close as that. That being said, they did start that game really well and probably should have had like 3 touchdowns on the board by the time things started to go awry, which is that coincided with the same play, which is Baker not really seeing Marlon Humphrey drop off his guy in the end zone and pick off a pass that he was trying to get in there for a touchdown, right? So what I'm saying is that game could have gone a very different way had the Bucs gotten rewarded for the sort of early success they had, where Baker was in that groove, was making good plays, and then it's like one bad decision, sort of the wheels came off the tracks completely. Now they're in trouble in the game, and Baker's trying to throw the ball 50 times to come back, and that gets messy. But if the Bucs can, like the last few weeks, every sort of first drive, Baker's looked good. He's been in a rhythm. He's been in groove. He's been, marching down the field, looking like he's comfortable. And then it's when things go wrong that things really go wrong. He seems to be this quarterback that, you talk about quarterbacks being streaky. He seems to be that within games. Like if he's comfortable and in a groove, that offense can be really difficult, even without, their top 2 wide receivers. But when things like when the tracks hit a bump, then suddenly it's like it spirals out of control and he just loses. He gets out of it's like a record skipping, right? The needle comes out of the track and it's like, and you get the screeching sound.
And all that said, I know a lot of the points came in garbage time against the Ravens. They scored late against the Falcons. They're still putting up a lot of points. The defense has been a much bigger issue for Tampa Bay these last few weeks. I was shocked when they beat the Eagles a few weeks back with all of their injuries. They played a great game. They've had a lot of injuries on that side of the ball, but these last few weeks, the defense has just given it up against I mean, against Baltimore, they made some big plays against the Saints, but that was Spencer Rattler's first start. They couldn't stop Baltimore, and they really couldn't stop Atlanta, especially in the first half with that passing attack. So that's where I think Tampa Bay is going to struggle in this one. Kansas City has what, again, we highlight this every week, an efficient but not explosive offense right now.
Yeah.
It is 4 yards on the ground, 6 yards through the air, 5 yards on the ground, 7 yards through the air. They grind it out, and as long as Patrick Mahomes isn't throwing interceptions, I mean, that's really what it is. Some of them have been fluky. As long as the Chiefs aren't turning the ball over, they're generally moving the ball, not putting a ton of points on the board, but they're controlling the game, right? And then their defense has just been outstanding. And so that's where it's going to be an interesting matchup on that side. And then you're expecting more from DeAndre Hopkins. He played a little over 20 snaps last week. More DeAndre Hopkins, another week of practice with him and Patrick Mahomes. I think the offense in Kansas City will continue to grow as the season goes here. And they have a chance to have a lot of success against the Bucs this week.
Definitely. We're starting to integrate DeAndre Hopkins. I think week on week we're going to see that grow and expand and become more impactful. Travis Kelce, I think, is looking more and more like himself as the season progresses. They can still dial up key plays for Xavier Worthy. The pieces are there for that offense to be better than it has been for most of the season. And I think the Bucs are a reasonable defense to get that done against. Remember, traditionally, Patrick Mahomes is amazing against the blitz, and you do not want to blitz him. Todd Bowles doesn't tend to change for anybody, so theoretically, it's just not a good matchup for him. Now, obviously, the most famous matchup of the two is the Super Bowl, where he just got murdered.
Yeah,
Mahomes. But
so there's two
he got
games
murdered with no offensive line.
There's 2 games on either side of that. The first time they played was in the 2020 season, where I think Tyreek Hill had 200 yards in the first quarter.
Right.
Ridiculous, right? So Mahomes and the Chiefs got the better of him that game. Then the Super Bowl happened. They had some offensive line issues. I also think Mahomes didn't play very well.
Some
didn't play
offensive line
patient.
issues, I think, understates what that was.
They had both backup tackles.
Yeah, like that offensive line was an absolute ruin, and Mahomes consequently got murdered.
Yeah, and it was also the game that said maybe we should throw the ball underneath more. I mean, they still had Tyreek Hill and they had Travis Kelce on the field, and they didn't have any answers in that game. They scored 9 points in the Super Bowl. They played again in 2022. Chiefs moved the ball really effectively and dominated Bulls' defense. I think the Chiefs' offense, or Mahomes and his style, matches up very well against Todd Bowles overall. Just didn't do it in the Super Bowl in that one game. So I think the Chiefs will have a lot of success offensively. Tampa, it's an interesting one because, again, I don't think you want Baker Mayfield throwing the ball 45, 50 times in a game. But I mentioned last week the Raiders had 16 yards on 17 carries from their running backs. Tampa has a much better run game than they have in the last couple of years with their 3-headed monster at running back. They have to run the ball a little bit to take pressure off Baker Mayfield, but they can't. You have to play underdog football against the Chiefs. You have to play aggressively to try to pull something off here. So I think it's trying to find that balance where you need Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. Like, you need those guys to make some plays, but you can't just be wasting downs against this Chiefs defense that is so good up front.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, it's tricky because I think because of what we talked about before, I don't know that they're in a great spot if they get behind the game, the way they did against Baltimore. I think they need to be playing, not with a lead necessarily, but from a neutral or positive game script situation, right?
Yeah.
They need to take advantage of their opportunities. They need to score when they're there, and they can't get down to the point where they feel like they need to push, and suddenly Baker is forcing the ball and making bad mistakes.
All right, man. 8.5, Monday Night Football in Kansas City. Where are you going with this one?
I'm going to go with the Bucs to cover 8.5. I just don't think the Chiefs' offense is going to put up that many points that line survives.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take Kansas City again in this one. I took them last week against the Raiders. Raiders backdoor cover last week, right? Harry will also take Kansas City. I think their offense is going to start clicking with D-Hop, and I think it's just get the Super Bowl out of your mind. I think it's a great matchup for Kansas City's offense against Bulls and the Bucs.
Yeah.
So I'll take the Chiefs.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.